one of the themes that was throughout the conference was never to let a good crisis go to waste. And we absolutely, digital transformation has seen a massive increase over the last couple of years.
Welcome to Process Pioneers, the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process. Welcome to the next episode of Process Pioneers. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the host of Process Pioneers, and this episode, it's a special one. So if you are joining us for the first time, a warm welcome to you. This episode is going to be a little bit different to our normal episodes. We've got about 150, 160 plus episodes in our library of educational content there, educational conversations, all about the topic of business process management. I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with industry experts and specialists and practitioners that are living and breathing this day in and day out. And if you are coming back, and maybe you're a long-time listener, welcome back to you as well. It's always good to have listeners come. And I was actually just talking to someone today that was saying every time a new episode comes out, they jump on it. They're eager and keen to listen to the next episode, which is really encouraging. But if you have been listening for some time, we would really appreciate a rating or a review on whatever platform you listen to this on, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I know Google has a platform, YouTube, all the different platforms. So if you give us a rating or review, that's going to help us continue to spread the message, get the word out. And that's what we're all about here, is getting these conversations out because they're very valuable and very educational conversations. And in today's episode, as I mentioned, it's a special one. I've actually got the absolute privilege of welcoming Jason Gonce onto the show. Now, Jason is a colleague of mine at GBTEC. You can see the GBTEC logo there behind Jason. And yeah, this is a very special one. I'll dive into it a little bit more detail. But Jason, thanks so much for joining me.
I'm excited to be here. Longtime listener and big fan.
So the reason I've invited you onto the show, Jason, is because, and the audience, this is mainly for you guys, is because Jason and I attended a OPEX conference last week, Operational Excellence. It was the OPEX Week 2023 Business Transformation Summit in Sydney, Australia. Don't be fooled by Jason's voice. He lives in Gold Coast, Australia. So we both flew down to Sydney to attend this event, and it was really an exceptional event. I certainly got a lot out of it, and I only attended one of the days, and Jason was able to be there the whole time. So I thought, what a great podcast for us to go and recap that event, our biggest lessons, our biggest takeaways, and also introduce you to Jason as well. So maybe Jason, kick us off by give us a bit of a rundown, a bit of a walkthrough of the event. Obviously, it was your first OPEX event. Take us on a bit of a journey there.
Oh, thanks you so much, Dan. I'm super excited to be here. Like you mentioned, I'm the new sales manager for GBTEC here in the APAC region, and we're all about giving back to the community, educating, motivating, and inspiring people to take their journey on process wherever it may be, from here to there. So we had an unbelievable week last week. I've been buzzing for the last week, just with so much excitement. We flew down to Sydney from the Gold Coast, and we were met with our people. And it was so good to get around the process practitioners, people that are out in the field, on the battlefield, fighting the good fight of business process management. The audience, the attendees, and all the other sponsors, I'd love to thank you. And I'd also love to give a big shout out to the Process Pioneers sponsor, GBTEC. We really appreciate you guys looking out for us and bringing this opportunity to the people.
Absolutely, that's great. And I think one thing that impressed me, I think maybe is the right word, maybe it isn't. But one thing that I really that stood out to me, let's say that stood out to me at the OPEX event was the caliber of attendee
there were a lot of senior leaders there. I think we both mentioned that after the event, like there's C-levels, there's GMs there, and majority of the audience, that was the level, and they were coming to an event about operational excellence, and a big part of the conversation, a big kind of main thread throughout the whole event was this topic of business processes and making sure that you're understanding and capturing and measuring and monitoring and everything and that's really promising to see. Not all senior leaders, not all C-suite executives see the value in it, but it was great to be in that environment surrounded by these people that you could tell that they were on the same page, all at different journeys, all at different maturity levels in terms of how they had already implemented or already started their BPM journey. But, it was great just being in a room with all of the like-minded people.
Absolutely. Tim Roberts from HSBC hosted the event and did a phenomenal job. OPEX, I'd love to thank the team that put this event together. OPEX is really showcasing their capability to bring some of the best of the best. The week before this, we had our virtual OPEX event in which our co-founder, Mark Stromberg, spoke with Philip Eat from SMS Group, which was a brilliant session. If you missed it, along with quite a few other brilliant speakers. To back up that in Sydney was such a pleasure to get to meet some of our fellow colleagues that work in this space, that understand the challenges, the uphill battle. When you're looking at going through digital transformation, process touches every part of a business. Really, a business is just a bunch of processes interconnected from the beginning of a business to the end. No matter where you're at, it's all process, and we're all on a journey of internally trying to create a culture that fosters continuous improvement, that is able to help your team understand, what is my process and why do we do this and what is the reasons behind it. And so it's quite a journey, and it was really great to hear some of the successes, and not only that, some of the failures. I absolutely loved that everybody was so willing to share the things that didn't go so well in between those four walls. And we won't name any names, but I think a lot of people are aware. Unfortunately, a lot of digital transformations have failed through COVID. A lot of us got pushed into massive transformations. And one of the themes that was throughout the conference was never to let a good crisis go to waste. And we absolutely, digital transformation has seen a massive increase over the last couple of years. So being on the ground, hearing some of the attendees and some of the speakers share their journey was so motivational, inspirational, and we just had a lot of fun. It was great to be face to face, and we had a brilliant time.
Yeah, absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. And obviously, you were able to attend the full conference, and I got to say, it was pretty jam packed, full of different speakers, different sessions. Like, I really like the way they conducted the event there. I don't think there was any session, or at least not from my memory, that, was drawn out any longer than, say, half an hour. They kept it really punchy. They packed so much in over those couple of days there. They had, a bunch of keynote speakers, keynote presentations, one after the other. They had some speed dating there, which I unfortunately missed that, but it sounded like that was an absolute hit. They had obviously the showroom floor with, various vendor booths and obviously the meal area and a networking area to be able to connect with all of the other attendees. And then they had these breakout sessions and where you could sit down and just really deep dive into specific topics with those attendees that were particularly interested in that particular topic. For you, Jason, talk to us about, you've already mentioned a couple of things there. Loved what you're saying, never let a good crisis go to waste. I remember that quote. That's a memorable quote and something that stuck with me. Tell us about any other memorable moments or presentations for you over the course of the couple of days.
There's so much to share. And I'd love to add, if you were on the fence and thinking about coming to this and not coming and you didn't make it next year, don't miss these opportunities. It's a really great place to take the challenges you're facing and get into it. But some of the key takeaways for me were really hit home and really resonated. I could see across the crowd. One of my favorite takeaways was make sure that before you start any transformation, that you understand that you've got to ask for your team's heart before you reach out and ask for their hand. And what the speaker that shared that with I really meant was that you've got to understand who they are. What challenges are they facing? What are the things that they're battling, and really try to bring that to visibility. And what we know is that if you feel listened to and that you understood, that gains appreciation for whoever it is that's spending that time to understand you. It leads to a culture of trust. And without that, any transformation is really bound to fail. We heard a lot of organizations that felt their culture maybe wasn't where they wanted it to be. And just like any houseplant, your environment in which you are in can either cause you to thrive or to really fail and run. So we really had some really brilliant learnings. One of the ones that really struck home with me, because, to be honest, I think a lot of the audience, when they were asked some of the hard-hitting questions, had to put their own hands up. And I know I did as well, because Katie Stevens, and I've got to shout you out, you killed it on your session. What she shared was to find your naysayers in the business. And it might go quite against what a lot of us do, which I know I'm guilty of, which is leaning on the side of the team that is with me on my initiatives, whether that's more holidays or whatever it might be, right? You've got to find the people that are your naysayers and find out, well, what is it that they're so negative about, and get their opinion, ask for their feedback, and ask them to come along the journey. And then also ask them to flip it around and ask, well, if we were successful in this, what's in it for you? And what's in it for our internal customers, our external customers, our regulators, and the end result? And being able to have metrics around that, and starting with the end in mind, and really having a clear strategy around what is it that we're trying to attempt and why. And without having a clear strategy and really committing to making sure everybody on the team's heart's in the right place, it's so easy to miss. And so really creating a culture of continuous improvement starts with the right people, and having a senior leadership that's willing to coach, to share, that to seize the opportunities, but really to have what Christine Blythe shared with us. God bless us with 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should use them in that order, and not talk twice as much as we listen. So much to share, so many great lessons and learnings. And I think everybody at the event, during the breakout sessions were probably some of my favorite times, because, there was different sections to put on by different process practitioners. And when they rang the bell, it was like everybody was just so deep into conversation, and the conversations were just flowing, and they rang the bell 2, 3, maybe 4 times. They're like, okay, it's time to go. And people were still deep in conversation and really sharing their challenges and the things that they really wanted to get out, and to find out, well, hey, have you experienced this? And what did you do? And hey, we've done that. And I could see people, connecting numbers and LinkedIn's, and it was just a great place to learn, to grow, and to share.
Absolutely. No.
What was the biggest takeaway for you, Dan? I mean, I know you missed out on the first day. You were over in Germany and Bochum for our user days. What was the biggest takeaway you found?
Good question. You mentioned quite a lot there that, some of that I was there for, obviously only attending the last day. Some of that I was able to participate in myself. And then other things is, comments and your feedback to me after we caught up. Like, I think before jumping into my thing, I think, I guess just on what you were saying there, I think a big part of it is EQ, like as people that, are involved in the process space, whether you're a process practitioner on a real sort of nuts and bolts level, or whether you're more from a senior leadership perspective, at the end of the day, we're working with people. We're collaborating with people. We're bringing people on a journey. And so I think having and EQ is so important in this space. So, that comment there about asking for your team's heart before you ask for their hand, empathizing with them, understanding them. And you mentioned there, what's in it for them? We need to understand what is in it for them. How do we bring them on this journey? Because it needs to be a win-win-win all around. You're not going to have very motivated people. You're not going to have a very motivated team if they don't know what's in it for them. They're just going to be begrudgingly doing it without really understanding, but why? How's it going to benefit me? How's it going to help me? Finding the naysayers, creating that culture of continuous improvement where people feel empowered to be able to bring their thoughts and ideas and suggestions and recommendations to the table, and not just a certain group of people, but we want to leverage frontline operational employees as well. They're in the at the coalface, doing the work day in and day out, actually participating in the step by step on a task level in the process. So we want to be able to hear from them and create that atmosphere or that environment to leverage their recommendations, because there's a lot of value that we can leverage there. And so I guess to answer your question to me, Jason, I would probably say the point that really stuck out to me and another common thread that I felt through the part that I was able to attend was the whole strategy to execution piece. I think, and maybe it was because there were a lot of senior leaders in the room, but really understanding an organization sets the vision, sets the strategic objectives, or the leadership sets the strategic objectives for that organization. But an organization isn't just the senior leadership. An organization could be hundreds of people. It could be thousands of people. In some cases, it's tens of thousands of people. So how do we take the strategic objectives of the organization and break that down, disseminate that into the hands and feet of the people on the ground? How do we take such a big strategic objective of an organization and enable and empower your Jennies, your Bobs, your Bills, your Steves? How do we empower them to be able to do their work so that it is contributing to the strategic objectives, that they know the work that they're doing is contributing because they're going to feel valued that way? So that was a big part of the conversation I felt throughout that second day there was, how do we tie the strategic objectives to all of the work that's getting done? It's through the business processes. How do we optimize? How do we embark on this sort of operational excellence journey? It's through our processes. We need to understand our processes. We need that base level, that starting point. We've got to be able to create a target, create a goal, but we're only really able to create that target and goal if we know where we're starting from. Otherwise, you're just shooting blind in the dark because you're not sure, how far off you are from that target. Are we 100? Are we an extra 100-person resource off that target? Are we extra 10,000 person off that target? You need to understand your baseline. Where are we starting at? And then from there, you can then start to prioritize where we spend our time, effort, and energy in order to, again, help the organization meet its or pass its strategic objectives, reach those strategic objectives. And that's so important. That's obviously, those are the big needles in an organization. How do we move those? And how do we do that amongst so many people? So I think that was a real key point for me, key takeaway. I think also customer experience and employee experience. And I loved how they were both in the same conversation. Oftentimes you can have your customer experience fans, you can have your employee experience fans. I love that we're talking about them in tandem because they both have an impact on one another. I remember one of the sessions they were talking about how if you focus so much on your customer experience, but then you don't back that up with the back-end business processes to support that, then it doesn't matter how good your customer experience is. If your back-end processes aren't supporting them, aren't good enough, it's going to all fall in a heap at some point in the future anyways, and vice versa. You might have the best running, the most efficient back-end processes because maybe you feel like, well, we have control over that. We're working internally within an organization. We've got direct access to all of the people within our processes. Let's work on those. Let's start with that. But if you're not optimizing the customer experience, well, then likewise, it's all going to fall over in a heap because you might have the best running back-end processes, but if you're not getting the customers, or worse, if the customers are leaving and going elsewhere, then you don't really have a business, or that organization isn't going to stand around for too long. So I think for me, it was the strategy to execution. It was the CX and the EX. I think for me, honestly, those two points were the big ones that stood out to me. And I think, obviously, number of fantastic sessions. Another point was, and it was more of just a kind of a subsection of a larger, wider presentation, but talking about senior leaders unable to really know what's happening in the weeds of the organization. And I don't know if you remember, there was the big iceberg image and reminds me, I think they were saying that, senior leaders see less than 4% or something.
Yeah, so it was a great image. And I think it was so relevant because the end users, the people that are in the coal mine, to say at the bottom of the iceberg, they really feel all the pain, all the pressure. They know the problem inside and out. How do you connect those people that are on the front line to the senior leadership? And it showed that, from the bottom of the iceberg, they understand the problem 100%, like fully. They can tell you where it hurts and how bad it hurts and what the problem really is. But as you filter up to the top of the iceberg, as we know, the top tip of the iceberg is just a small percentage, right? And what was shared is, some of these massive 10,000 plus organization employees wise, their senior leaderships are made up of like 5 to 8 people. And so what we found is that they literally saw on the iceberg that it's like 3 or 4% of the senior leadership really understand that challenge. And what was really great was that through the different sessions and through the different speakers, we had different ideas and different thoughts shared on it. One of the ones that I loved was from Teachers Mutual. They actually developed 2 personas, one of a very disgruntled, angry employee that had, bad visibility of their processes, old legacy systems that weren't able to connect and extend them to the right person. And they had to continually redo work over and over again. And I'm sure a lot of you out there could resonate with this. There's nothing worse than spending 2 or 3 weeks on a big project, coming to the end of it and finding out, oh, wait a minute, that process is 4 versions too old. You need to redo this, you need to redo that. And the frustration that causes, it unfortunately leads to your people leaving the organization. A lot of the younger generations come in, they want you to have the most innovative, state-of-the-art technology. And if you're struggling with that, reach out. We can help you. But it's not just about the technology. It's about having the right people that have beautifully designed processes and that are able to continually go through that optimization, internalization, redesign, and have to be able to sit down and process in the nitty-gritty of it in workshops and really be able to internalize what are the metrics that we're managing here. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And without having a clear strategy from the top down and having your senior leadership on board and understanding the problem, you'll never have a very successful continuous culture of improvement. And the other big thing that I took away from this was that we should celebrate our failures. So many organizations are worried about, we deal with technology, robotic process automation, process mining, and, there's screenshots and people are being monitored, and people that don't understand this get scared because they think, oh, maybe I might be replaced. And that can lead to cultures where they don't want to share the learnings of failure. But really, to me, failure is just the first attempt in learning. And so if you celebrate those big 6 failures and share them and make that public knowledge of, hey, this is why we do it. One of the great stories I shared that I absolutely love is there's a story, and I don't know exactly the origins of this, so I don't want to take credit for it fully, but there was a wife, and she, every night when they would cook a lamb roast, she would cut both ends of the roast off. And the husband asked her, well, why do you do this? I don't understand. Like, you're throwing away like a chunk on each end of it. And she said, well, that's the way mom did it. And we traced that back. So she called her mom, and mom said, well, that's the way grandma did it. So we instinctively follow the processes that get handed over to her or inherited to us. So luckily grandma was still around, and she got on the phone and said, hey, grandma, like, what's going on with this? I've been doing my roast like this forever. Everybody loves it, but there's never enough, right? And so grandma shared with them, oh, I just did that because the oven wasn't big enough to fit the roast in, and she had been throwing away meat for years. So starting sometimes, not knowing where the process started, you need to start from the beginning and redesign. Or if you're more mature, you might have already gone through that wheel and those lessons of failure and pain. But it was a great example of understanding, hey, you need to, where does the process start? Why do we do what we do? Having the right people that understand their process and that love your product and that feel supported in a team. So there's so much more to share. Obviously, I don't want to go on forever, but it was absolutely fantastic. A massive kudos to OPEX. We're really excited. We're going to be attending Miami OPEX World Transformation later this month, and I'm really excited to get there and see what's in store there as well.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be a fantastic conference, fantastic event, similar to where we're at last week and at the OPEX in Sydney. But I think that that's such a fantastic story that you were finishing up there with, talking about the roast in the oven. I think that's a great sort of story, a great analogy to be able to share internally, within organizations, to be able to understand, well, the business landscape, it's changing so rapidly. There's so many new policies and regulations and technology, like things are changing monthly and weekly, and in some cases daily, like so rapidly. And that's why your big organizations that are particularly those that have such a huge sort of presence in the online, the digital space. I'm thinking of big companies like your Airbnbs, your Ubers, your Facebooks, your Instagrams. Like they've got, I think I heard at one point Facebook had, tens of thousands of different variations of Facebook released to the public, to different user groups at any one time. And they're just testing. They're testing, to 100,000 people, they see Facebook slightly different. And to another group of 100,000 people, they see almost the same, but maybe the buttons changed in a slightly different way. Like they're always tweaking and testing and working out, like we need to continue to evolve and improve and change what we're doing if we want to keep up to the ever evolving landscape, and if we want to always stay ahead. And so I think to tie it back into that story, it's like, well, we need to understand why we, as you said, why we do what we do, why do we do the process this way? Where did this originate from? Can it be done in a different way? Can it be done better? Another story that comes to mind is I read somewhere talking about why is the train track the width that it is, and it was something about originally like the tunnels through like a mountain. I think this is the story. I'll probably botch it up, but tunnels through mountains when they're transporting like goods from village to village, and they created a tunnel that was just wide enough for two oxen to be side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and to pull the goods through the mountain and through the paths and the tracks and the roads and stuff. And so that was the typical or the standard width for all of those, like whether it was a bridge or a tunnel or just a main road or something. That was the width because it was the width of those two oxen. And then, obviously technology evolved, and we came up obviously with the train system and the coal train system, and they were obviously wanting to reuse the tunnels that were already built and the bridges that were already there. And so it made sense to create the train the same width, and the train tracks the same width as what was already there. And so I think, that's a story of just doing what, just following what's already been done in the past, because that's how it's always been done. And obviously, in that example, you could make a pretty strong case as to why it's probably a good idea to stick with that size. But I think when it comes to our organizations, we need to be critiquing what we do and being like, hey, we're in 2023 now. Like, it's a different world now. Like, it's a different world than 2003. It's a different world to 2013. It's a different world to 2018, 19, 20. It's a different world now, and things are different. Like, artificial intelligence has just blown onto the scene. And almost every application, every technology that I use in my day-to-day life or in my professional life, they all have a little button there now for artificial intelligence. Every application, every technology is building artificial intelligence into their platforms. And it's just real, like, it's honestly blowing me away what's possible and how we're able to leverage this technology. I think it's just really impressive. So I think, all of this to say, the OPEX week, it was fantastic. I gleaned a lot. You obviously gleaned a lot. It's really got us thinking about many different aspects when it comes to the business process management journey. I think it was a fantastic audience there, fantastic attendance. The speakers were world class. That's for sure. So I think it's I'm excited for the next one, and I'm sure you're excited for the OPEX one coming up in Miami.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's great. Well, Jason, thank you so much for sitting down and having this conversation. I think that, it was definitely a different episode to what we would normally do. But, when you come across, here on the Process Pioneers podcast, we're all about educating the wider audience around business process management, how to implement it well, how to implement it successfully and sustainably over the long term. There's just so much that goes into it. So I think being able to attend a conference like this, like the OPEX week, being able to talk about it and the things that we got, that's the next stepping stone. These little podcast episodes, we go for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes on these sessions, but it's really only scraping the surface, if I'm honest. And it's events like these, the OPEX weeks, the Gartner conferences, the many conferences that are around ABPMP. We've got the IIBA, national conference coming up. All of these conferences are just fantastic to be able to go to the next level in terms of sitting down and hearing from industry experts, specialists, practitioners. These are the places that you want to be. And, as the podcast series, we just kind of want to direct people in those directions as well. So, Jason, thanks for sitting down with me. I've enjoyed this conversation. It's been great reminiscing on the OPEX week that we went to last week. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. And everybody out there, keep on listening, share with a friend, just one. We'd love that. And thank you for your participation.